get comfortable reading your contracts. Reading your own contracts sounds very simple, but it can save you down the line.
You're listening to Talk Doc to Me, a podcast and community dedicated to candid conversations around documentary storytelling. I'm your host and fellow filmmaker, Leah de Leon, and today's guest is Monica Medellin. Monica is a director dedicated to expanding narratives around women and people of color in sports through media, including ahead-of-the-trend film, TV, and branded content. Monica is the creator and executive producer of Surf Girls Hawaii, a 4-part docuseries made in partnership with Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine, and is available to watch on Amazon Prime. She's also created branded content for big brands like Nike, Red Bull, and the Olympic Channel, to name a few. Monica is a bold trailblazer, thoughtful storyteller, and a dear friend of mine. I hope you love this episode. Monica has so much value to share as a first-time TV show creator, and she's giving us all the details of how to get your film on a streaming platform. So enough yapping, let's get into it. Can you tell me the first memory you have of picking up a camera?
I had a family camcorder that my mom owned, and I would go around Venice, Santa Monica neighborhood where I grew up and film skate content and surf content with my girlfriends because we always wanted to do what the boys did and we wanted to show the world what we were made of.
I made some home videos too, and I feel like it was always interesting because you couldn't cut anything, so like you had to plan like, what's my like establishing, stop, okay, what's like my next thing, stop.
Yes.
And it was like really fun actually. But then did you feel like you were directing already, kind of looking back on it?
Yeah, in retrospect, I think I was born to be a director, and I'm just so happy that my mom fostered that in me. She really believed in my passions and helped me pursue them from a very young age. And that was such a blessing, especially coming from a single working immigrant mom from Mexico that, you know, didn't have a chance at her own creative career that she wanted to pursue. So it was very forward thinking.
When did you feel like you were like, oh, documentaries, like that's cool, I want to make documentaries? Like, did you have, because you studied journalism, and I feel like journalism is quite different than documentary. So when did you feel like you had that switch? Yeah,
I mean, I would say I didn't really have the tools to define what I wanted to do in college.
Yeah.
I just knew that I wanted to tell stories about real people and people from my community or my friend groups that I felt were missing from the conversation in mainstream media, in branded content, and commercials. So that's how I approached my documentary filmmaking path. It was very like non-traditional, I feel like.
I don't think there's a traditional path.
There isn't?
I'm like, I don't think there is one. I don't think anyone grows up thinking I'm going to be a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah, maybe, you know, it was a filmmaker. Maybe it was, you know, a video producer. But a documentary filmmaker is not something that I identified as until maybe after I made my first documentary and realized, oh, I made a documentary. I definitely felt a little insecure, I would say, in, you know, my early 20s because I didn't go to film school and I felt like I was behind and needed to catch up and didn't have the skill set or terminology to, you know, get myself through set. And, you know, I learned that you learn very quickly being initiated by fire. So that's kind of how I learned a lot of what I learned, is just by doing it and being fearless in pursuing whatever it is that I wanted to do. So that's documentary filmmaking.
It works. You just got to learn by doing, right?
Yeah.
In college, you landed an internship at the LA Times, right? So tell me, what was your role there? Or like what kind of skills did you gain at this internship that you feel like still like carry with you today?
Yeah, so actually previous to the Los Angeles Times internship, I was a digital assistant at Univision. So this was a new platform for young people just like me who were first generation Latinx and, you know, who didn't necessarily speak Spanish fluently. So that really caught my attention because I never really felt like I was Latina enough. And this platform was geared towards this demographic. And we told stories about people like me and people like my friends who identified in so many different ways. After having both of those experiences, the Los Angeles Times internship that I had was really unique because we were adjacent to the newsroom, but we weren't reporting on daily news stories. It was a new digital platform that was aimed towards making a digital documentary a week that reflected this emerging American identity. So around race, immigration, and cultural identity. So this is where I really got to make the first documentary films that I'm really proud of still today. And as an intern, I worked my way up towards associate producer and was producing these films. So that's ideating the concept, that's going into different communities in the United States and talking to people and hearing their stories. And this was around the 2016 election, which was a very heated time. And we are still seeing the aftermath of that. So how can we uncover the stories of people who are maybe politicized in the news? That time was super special to me because I learned how to create character-driven content and, you know, story-driven content. It didn't matter what cameras we had, it didn't matter what budget we had, but we had a unique story and a unique angle. Yeah. So there were a lot of great films that I made at that time that I think influence my work now.
For sure. And for people that maybe, you know, you get a cool internship or job and you're like, yes, like I got an internship at the LA Times, like mom would be proud. But then you were an intern first and then you ended up being an associate producer. What things did you do that you feel like you stood out to earn that spot? Or like, tell me a little bit, like for people that are thinking or have a cool job, if you will, or a cool internship, a cool opportunity, but then you still have to work to move your way up, right? Like what are those things that you did that you feel like set you up for that?
I mean, I learned this work ethic from seeing my mom work to make ends meet, my older sister. For me, I mean, it was showing up early, staying late. It was showing up as 150%, not just 90. It was, you know, offering help even when, you know, maybe I wasn't asked. Obviously, you have to find a balance because you don't want to be the annoying intern.
You don't want to be annoying, but you want to be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So it came from a very humble place of wanting to learn and just expose myself to as many opportunities as possible. My first tasks as an intern at the LA Times were actually transcribing interviews for the documentaries that we were making.
Thank goodness for Premiere now, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. Nobody has to do that.
I'm glad that I was able to gain that skill set though, because that was my way of really intimately learning about this story. When you're listening to somebody's interview and transcribing it, you're just really intaking that information and you're internalizing it.
Yeah.
It's so different. Yeah. Like I remember verbatim to this day, different lines that I was transcribing that have impacted me. And I think that's the beauty of documentary filmmaking is these are real stories and it's super inspiring to hear ordinary people do extraordinary things. I was happy to transcribe. It took probably 8 to 10 hours because I also wanted it to be perfect. Yeah. Because I was an intern and I'm like, if there is one typo in here or if I'm missing a comma, I'm fired. Yeah. But it's that extra attention to detail that I think helped me get to the associate producer role. And I think it's what helps me excel as a director now. It's like, you need to pay attention to that extra thing that maybe no one else is noticing. Yeah. And use that. So
attention to detail.
Attention to detail.
Do you feel like you had that, like, I guess I call it kind of like a sixth sense almost, like a story sense? How did you feel like you developed your story sense?
I think I just looked to my own experiences and I figured out what's important to me. What do I feel is missing in the media and what I'm watching? How can I, you know, show our experiences in a nuanced way? So I think that my sense just came from my shared experiences with my subjects at the time. Like I was dealing with topics around heavy things and social issues and political issues. And these are experiences that maybe my family member was going through as well. I have friends who are in a similar situation. So I really felt like that helped me relate to people and build trust with my subjects and whoever I was working with. Ideally, I like to build a relationship with people before turning a camera on, but in news, that's not always the case. Sometimes you're meeting somebody the morning of and you need to make a compelling short film about them in one day.
It's tough. I mean, like, everyone can try and be personable, but like, it is weird. You're like showing up to someone's house being like, cool, like, nice to meet you, make some small talk while we like set the cameras up. But it doesn't change the fact that like cameras are here. You just met this person.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big challenge. I feel like a lot of like, you get used to it, or you feel like, oh yeah, like I can talk to anyone. But whenever I really like stop and think about it, what we do, especially for those like one day shoots, or like you don't get a chance to meet with someone a lot ahead of time, you're really trying to like convince them to trust you. And it's like, it's a very interesting like psychology warfare type of like thing that we're always dealing with, I feel.
It's so funny because if you show up to set and, you know, have an air about you or a stress about finishing the project, that comes through in your conversation and your work. Like, I almost feel like I need to prepare the day before for a set day where we're unlocking a story around somebody. Like, you need to go in there and really have your heart open and be willing to listen and contribute things about yourself. I share a lot of experiences that I've gone through, which then help someone that maybe I've never met open up about themselves. So it's this shared experience and relationship that you're building in real time, even though the cameras are on.
Yeah.
So it's a little more difficult, I think, to approach filmmaking in that way, but sometimes you have to do it, and those are my ways.
Energy. I feel like that's so interesting, because I think it is something, like, I'm just thinking about when I prepare for shoots as well, that sometimes, I mean, with documentary, like, things can go out the window. You can have a beautiful treatment, you can have a beautiful shot list, but things will be different. But I think planning your energy is a very interesting like way of thinking about it. Because if you can, you know what you're generally doing, whether it's an interview or, you know, a tough scene or, you know, whatever it is, like, you're just like mentally preparing for how you can be supportive, or just like, it's the energy. It's like you're preparing for your energy.
Yeah, and I think it's just as important as preparing your equipment and making sure that you have all of your ducks in a row. Your camera settings are okay. It's like, I put energy in that same category. Where am I, and how can I contribute positivity to this shoot? Because you're the one who's leading. And as the leader, you have a big responsibility to set the vibe,
you gotta set the vibe.
Make sure that everybody's comfortable. And I think as a director, that's such a privilege, because there's a reason why I wasn't producing. I think the producer doesn't necessarily have, you know, have that luxury because they're putting out fires. But I'm speaking as a director. I think my energy is a really important factor in preparing, because everyone is going to feed off of that.
Yeah, and they look to you, right? Like, if something happens, they're like, how is Monica doing? You know, like, how's the director doing, you know?
Yeah, and having a great producing partner, I think. I'm still looking for a producing partner. I don't have someone that I always consistently work with, but when you have a great producer, everything is so much easier.
Flow.
And when they can handle and hold the emotions and the drama on set, it's just a game changer.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know, maybe one day we could.
Maybe one day.
Sorry, Matt.
Sorry, Matt. So you had a job at the Los Angeles Times, and then what? What was next in your career?
What was next was unpredictable at the time.
Yeah.
I decided to risk it all and start my own production company. I felt like I wanted to marry my passions for bridging these social issues and cultural stories with my love of sports. And that's exactly what I did with the Narnar Honeys, which was my first creative collective and later evolved production company that highlighted women and women of color in sports in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. A big part of that mission that I felt was different at the time was the fact that I emphasized how important it was to have diversity in our camera operators, our directors, producers. It was really important for me to have those women reflect the stories that we were telling, and we made some beautiful content. And it turned into a passion project that was on the weekend type thing to a fully functioning production company that made commercial and branded content. We really just used the power of social media to spread the word on what we were doing, and it proved to be very successful, and I'm so happy that that's a part of my story. It's a big part of it that helped me, you know, bridge these two worlds that I felt like I was balancing.
As a filmmaker in general, I think a lot of people ask themselves, should I go freelance? Should I start a production company? What kind of skill sets, what kind of mentality do you have to have in order to have a successful production company?
So I think there are two parts. We were a production company, but we also served as a creative agency. What we had that we felt gave us a leg up was access to stories, access to people that these bigger companies might not know about. They're lesser known names. They haven't exactly broken into the mainstream. So we had the opportunity to help emerge them into the zeitgeist. So we had this rich storytelling and this hunger to create these stories because we didn't want to wait for anybody else to do it. So we had camera operators, we had directors, producers, editors. We had our entire team in-house, and we had the stories, and we decided to make the content. This was without a brand deal. This was without proper budgeting.
Right, like you guys just started to do it.
It was for the love of filmmaking, and it makes so much sense because that's exactly how my filmmaking journey started as a little girl. I made it for the love of it.
Well, that's the best work that you can produce, right? Like,
yeah,
it's the stuff that you're naturally drawn to, the stuff that you're actually curious about, the stuff that you care about.
Yes. Some of us had full-time jobs during this time, and that helped us fund certain things. Like, we were all putting our own money towards this content. The brand deals and partnerships and financing came later. We just knew that we wanted to break these stories before anybody else did. Yeah. And, you know, some of these stories were around women in skateboarding, women in surfing, women in non-traditional sports that you weren't seeing at the time yet. And that's how my most successful idea to date was born. It was through this time where we really wanted to change the narrative for women in sports.
I want to go back to how you said you were both like a creative agency and a production house. For those that don't really know the difference, how would you define those two things?
So on some projects, we would serve as both. So that would be running production services through my LLC and ideating and conceptualizing the creative behind a project. On other projects, we would hire an outside production company, most of the time female-led. That was very important to us. And we would just focus on the creative. So it depended on the project and the budget and the subject matter. But I think it gave us a lot of flexibility to produce the projects that we wanted because we didn't need to ask for production services from anybody else. We were able to do that ourselves, and it really helped us get stuff done.
Well, and you were part of that community, right? The execs at Nike aren't like skating, right? Like on a random Thursday night and finding a really cool character like you are. And it's the access that makes like a huge difference that you can tell a story like that.
And if you want a piece of this, you will invest in this idea. You will be culturally relevant if you invest in us because we are the culture and we are the next generation of entertainment and advertising and commercial and branded content.
And tell me how you found the original story behind Surf Girls. So Surf Girls wasn't originally a TV series. It was a docu-series on YouTube put together. So can you walk us through what was the ideation process and then how did you pitch that two together?
During the time of running the Narnar Honeys, I knew that I wanted to create a film around women of color in surfing. This was around 2018, so there wasn't much out there yet. I feel like the industry is a little more saturated now, but at the time it was new and it felt like my gut was telling me, this is your life's work. This is what you've been building towards. This is where everything is hopefully going to pay off. I needed to get a little more industry experience from a league perspective. So my dream job was working at the World Surf League. That was the ticket to unlocking the inner workings of how this sport and industry work. So I used my Narnar Honeys content as my resume to get a job at the World Surf League. I never had league experience, sports industry experience, but I knew that the content that I was creating through my company would be impactful. While I was working at the World Surf League and in the surf industry, I noticed that there was a lot of coverage on male surfers and not a lot of female surfers. Every single day on our social content calendar, we would have to fill 6 to 9 spots of content. And probably 90% of it was men. And I saw a gap that I really wanted to change.
At that point, when you realized that, what was that next step that you took?
My mind went immediately to, we need to promote more women. We need more female representation in this sport. I want to see women that look like me and my friends presented on the world stage. That's exactly how I found the cast for Surf Girls Hawaii. I tapped into my networks and I looked online for different articles of women who were emerging in the sport. Native Hawaiian women who lived on Oahu and surrounding islands. And I knew that we had something special. It was gonna be further than social media posts. I didn't know exactly what it was, but that's exactly what happened. And I created my first docuseries on YouTube in partnership with TOGETHXR, which was a leading women in sports media company. So
how did that conversation go? Tell me what materials you had. So you had the access already, right? Which is the most important part. You talked to your cast, you had a relationship with them, but then in approaching a media company, what are those materials that you need in order to like greenlight a series or a film in your experience, in this particular experience?
The most important thing that still stands today that we had was access to the cast and relationships that were multi-year relationships with their families.
So is this like a cold email? Is this like phone call? Is this like, hi, I'm Monica. Like, I want to do a documentary potentially about your daughter. Like, I'd love to chat with you on the phone.
So working in the surf industry, I built a lot of relationships with the surf network. So these are creatives, pro athletes, managers, agents. I played the phone tag game. Hey, do you know so-and-so? She, is 15 years old. She's sponsored by Hurley. I want to get in touch with her manager or her parent. Do you have an email that you can provide me? So I went the email route. I think Instagram DM can help, but I wanted to just level up the professionalism and really make it feel legitimate. So I reached out via email, cold email, but I had the sign off of the community that I was in touch with.
Of course.
So one of the women that really helped me in the casting process was Carissa Moore's sister, Kayla Moore. She is a former pro surfer who was working at the World Surf League with me, and we had a similar vision and alignment on promoting more women of color in surfing. So with her help and my outreach, we were able to get in touch with the families and have them sign off on the project. And I think the difference is, we had a vision. I think a lot of the time people are approached with a documentary film with something like, we want to make a documentary film because we think that you're super interesting. And there's no vision beyond that. Well, who are you? What are your values?
What is it going to look like?
What is it going to look like? Who's a part of it? And I feel like we shared a lot about ourselves in the introduction so they can know who we are and what ground we stand on. And that I am a woman of color surfer myself.
That makes a huge difference.
I've been surfing since I was 10 years old. I'm not pro, but I definitely understand the lifestyle and the culture behind it and want to know more. So I think that, that approach was really helpful in getting our subjects to sign on. And now, the cast of Surf Girls are some of my friends, and I'm friends with their families, and we text very often, and it just turned into much more than a project.
For sure.
Because that was the intention going in. This isn't something to make a quick buck. We're here to change the culture. Around surfing, and we've never seen a film like this done before. Historically, surf films don't center Native people, and I wanted to see and create the first surf film that did that. They're not just a 5-minute backstory. They're not just a side character. They're not an extra. Like, this is the main story, and that's what was different about the show.
When you reached out to them, did you have like a visual treatment of any sort, or it was more so like just getting to know you and like the general concept and vision? And then maybe once you were ready to pitch it to a media company, that's when you got a little bit more nitty gritty about like who the characters were, what the story arc was, like what the series would be.
In the beginning stages in outreach, it was a get to know you. Hey, do you want to hop on a casting call? I would really love to know more about your story in your own words, and I can share a little bit about mine. Those calls really solidified our relationship because there was a connection and a bond there. If you're not vibing with somebody, I think a phone call is the best way to figure that out.
Catch someone's vibe, I mean, for sure.
Anybody can send a pretty email or, write a put together article, but I think once you get someone on the phone or on a video or in person, it's the real thing. So I think we had an automatic connection. And, it was myself, the cast, and their moms. All of the surf girl moms. So
I like the phrase of casting call, because I feel like sometimes I have this idea in my head. I'm like, oh, this person would be like an amazing documentary film. Like, I want to make a treatment about it. I want to like pitch it already in my head, or like I'm thinking so far in advance. And then I'm like, wait, like I actually don't even know this person yet. Like maybe we don't vibe. Like maybe this isn't a good fit. Like, so I feel like putting it as a casting call, because I think sometimes I put, speaking just from my own experience, like pressure on myself to have it all figured out before doing the outreach of like, you have the overall vision of, oh, I want to do this story because of this reason and I'm connected to it, but maybe I don't know where it's going to end up. I like the word casting call, because then it kind of, it sets a precedent to them as well, where it's like, okay, like it's just a get to know you. Let's see if this is the right fit before we take it to the next stage. But I feel like sometimes like we can be like, oh, like I know this person's like like I want to do this documentary. Like, you kind of jump the gun before you even like have a feeler phone call.
Yeah. And I think the casting call was really key in this particular project because it wasn't just a documentary about one person. This is about a collective of women, a sisterhood. We wanted them to be friends in real life. And one thing that I didn't want this show to be was catty or dramatic between women. I think oftentimes when you see television shows with a group of women, the stakes are the mean-spirited energy between women. And that's the exact opposite of what I wanted. So this casting call was not only to get to know the cast as individuals, but to kind of get a better understanding of what the group dynamic is, to make sure that we're not fabricating relationships that don't actually exist. And I had so many calls with so many amazing women. And, the deciding factor was, which friend group makes the most sense. And we really want to highlight Native Hawaiian women. We think that, there are a lot of amazing women out there, but a full Native Hawaiian cast has never been done before. I think this could be really special if we highlight these relationships. And I think when you have that cultural background and upbringing, everybody already knew everybody. You already grow up with each other. It's natural. So those casting calls are really important because when we were filming, we didn't have to create any scenarios that weren't real.
Already happening.
Yeah, obviously you have to produce, but it wasn't fake. So those calls really, really helped. And I think following up after the calls was really important. You don't want to just, have one call with somebody and end it there. You want to build rapport, build a relationship. So keeping tabs, even if it's just to say hi with no update.
Yep. I think that's huge. And that's something that will never go out of style. Like, it's just, you always have to keep in contact with people like, hey, what's up? And that goes really far.
Yeah, I agree. It's gone very far for me. And, you know, it's who I am, but it's also a great tactic to use when you're creating a documentary.
No, for sure. When I first met you, I watched the first series that you created with this cast that we just talked about. And that was through YouTube with Together. So once that was finished, now it's on Amazon with Hello Sunshine. How did you make that jump? What does that look like? Because it's still the same cast, same concept in a sense, but very different like format and distribution. How do you take that original idea that you had and bring it into Surf Girls Hawaii?
The original YouTube series was a series that I created for Together. We pitched strategically to Together because we shared the same values and were aligned in what we were doing as companies at the time. So through that financing, we released a series on YouTube. And from there, Hello Sunshine came on as another partner to additionally fund this idea to prepare for a streaming platform. Once Hello Sunshine came on board, we were able to create more materials to prepare this pitch for the market to go to a streaming platform. So what that looked like was filming a sizzle reel with Hello Sunshine Together and using some footage from the original documentary mixed in to then pitch around town. So Amazon was, you know, one of our first pitch meetings, and we sold it to them. They loved the idea, and this was actually the first female sports doc on the platform. It was very validating to see an idea of mine, you know, get this sort of sign off. It was really incredible to see how many partners came on to create Surf Girls Hawaii as what it is today.
And so there's a lot of steps in between there, right? Between like even getting the meeting, right, with Amazon. Like at a high level, like what are those things that maybe you didn't know, you know, looking back at your younger self, like what are some of those things that you wish that you knew about the process behind getting even conversation with someone like Amazon?
There was so much learning throughout this whole process, and I think this could be a whole other podcast. I think the biggest learning was this Hello Sunshine Reese Witherspoon sign off was the most important step in getting this series to a streamer. Honestly, it was timing, but I think what was really important about this process is Hello Sunshine has a connection to the network and the streamers that I simply don't have as a up-and-coming director and producer in the industry. So you really want to attach yourself with a company that holds these connections and can make things happen that might not be in your wheelhouse yet. So through this relationship, we were able to connect with Amazon and other streamers and get the best deal possible. And the show sold. And I don't think it would have happened had Hello Sunshine not come on to support the project.
How do you find that company? Like if you have, let's say, a documentary that you're working on yourself, you're thinking about getting on a Netflix, a Hulu, a HBO, whatever. What are those things? And you're just an emerging filmmaker. You don't have those connections. No one in your family is part of the entertainment world. Where do you go?
Something that I learned through this process as well is researching what's in front of you. So when you turn on Netflix, turn on Amazon, turn on Apple, the three major streamers, and you see a show, you can look at the credits. You can see who produced it. You can see what production companies are attached to it. And you might start to see a pattern. Oh, this production company produces a lot of content for Netflix. You're not going to want to ever pitch directly to Netflix unless you have a reputable company attached to you, or at least a name attached to you. So maybe the strategy is pitch the company. They're way more accessible than a streamer is. Okay, look at the company, who works within this company. Who can I reach out to pitch this idea to, or at least get a temp on? These are the tactics that I used now after creating my first show to figure out how to get my next projects off the ground. I also have an agent, so that helps. But I think the more you know, the better. So you need to do your own research and look at the credits, listen to podcasts around filmmaking, around what's happening in the town, and make sure that you're up to date on who's looking for what, because one of your ideas could be the ticket at that point in time. So I think there's a lot of strategy that goes behind it that people don't really talk about, but you start to see very consistent patterns when you start to pay attention to how this all works. It's a very well-oiled machine, and I think there's a lot that can be observed through sitting at your own home and just looking.
Just go down the deep rabbit hole. Just like watch all the credits, Google everything.
Put your investigating hat on and do the work.
And it's always people, right? Like it can feel like a scary, like who works at Amazon? Like you feel like it's like this big abyss, but it's like, no, it's actually just people. Like go watch something that you like or that's similar to your topic, look at the credits, look them up, maybe hit them up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and as a first-time show creator at the time, my strategy was not to go direct to Amazon. That is not a strategy that I recommend.
You need a warm connection.
So really, it was my two partners, specifically Hello Sunshine, that really helped bridge that communication and broaden my network, because I didn't have that network.
That's such a great tip, honestly. Like it seems so like no duh, but I feel like it's so helpful to know. And yeah, just watch the credits, find people, reach out, be genuine, and do your research, do your homework.
And make sure you have your materials in line. You know, make sure
what
that you have a strong...
What materials should you have?
I don't think you need a sizzle necessarily from my experience. I think there might be differing opinions on this. I think any sort of tape is helpful. A lot of my stories are character driven. So you want to see your cast interacting with each other and to the camera. That could be a Zoom call. That could be something remote. It could be in person. It could be put together in CapCut. It could be put together in Premiere.
Well, it doesn't have to be for public viewing, right?
No.
Like your sizzle does not have to be for public view.
No.
It's literally a private link that you share with people. So it doesn't even have to be super polished, right? Like
no.
It's something that you are just showing, this is my proof of concept. These are my characters.
Yes.
And like the overall style, maybe, would you say?
Yes. And I wouldn't even go as far as to call it a sizzle. I just say, here's additional tape of the cast so you can see how they interact with each other and are on camera. Because you can write an entire treatment about how amazing your cast is. But if you're a first-time show creator, not many people are probably going to believe you until they see it.
Yeah.
So you really have to come in prepared with as many materials as possible and be ready to make some changes and hear some feedback and be flexible on your original idea. Because there's a reason why you want to work with this company.
Right.
It's because they know how to make a show for a streamer. And you need to take that advice and make some concessions if they're going to be your partner in the future. And you really want to respect that feedback, but also make sure that you stay true to your vision as the creator of the show. So I think that's the balance that I'm still working on today. But through creating my first TV show, that was, one of the big takeaways was that first pitching process, making sure that you're prepared.
And then once you land that deal, obviously there's a lot of negotiations and contracts and all of that. Like, what was the biggest learning for you in that process of legal matters, like making it official?
The best advice that I received through the process of making my first TV show was to get comfortable reading your contracts. Reading your own contracts sounds very simple in theory, but it can save you down the line. The contract is the basis of your idea and your deal. So if you don't know what's in there, you're not really setting yourself up for success, in my opinion. There were a lot of terms that I had no idea existed. And you can use Google to figure out what those terms mean. You want to know every single sentence, phrase, and term in that contract so you can know what the basis of your deal is. And ideally, you work with an entertainment lawyer or your agent to button that up and make sure that it's within reason and to industry standard. But I have such a good relationship with my agent and my entertainment lawyer now. I can tell them what I want from a contract what I can pass on, what I can be flexible on, and they will package that for me and deliver it to the client or partner that we're working with. So it really is a strategic thing to be able to read your own contracts, because you can then have deeper conversations with your team around what you're looking for versus, what you can maybe, leave behind.
What are some things that someone should consider thinking about, whether it's like the ability to have a creative say in a cut, or whether it's the credit? Like what are some of those like conversations that you had with yourself, like when you had the contract, or even before you knew the contract was coming? Like what were those things that you thought about for yourself?
There are a couple of things in your deal points that you want to think about before signing a contract. You want to secure your credit. Is that an executive producer credit, a producer credit? What does that credit look like for you as the creator of your idea? And another thing is your fee. What does that fee look like for potentially working on this project for the next few months up to a year? I think, creative say is a really good point that you brought up. Some people want to take a passive credit and maybe not be a part of the set, and that's okay. But for me, it was really important to be a part of the creative process from its, ideation all the way through post. So I think asking for something like meaningful consultation in key creative matters and thinking about like, what are those key creative matters that are important to you? For me, it was making sure that I'm sent cuts in post to give feedback and notes on. On set, it's being present during interviews and scene work and B-roll, and making sure that I get to work with the director to create the vision in its new form. So those are a few things that...
I hope everyone's taking notes. I'm like, this is like some good stuff, because I feel like from a run and gun perspective, all of that seems like obvious. Like, of course I'd watch it cut. Like, of course I'd be on set, or all these things. But when you are dealing with more partners, you're dealing with the streamers, it's, it is a well-oiled machine and they have their ways. And so you do have to list out your whole wish list. You are the creator and executive producer of Surf Girls Hawaii. What does an executive producer do?
Well, this is a loaded question.
Please spill the tea, because I'm dying to know, because I keep getting confused myself.
An executive producer, or EP, also referred to as, could be a number of roles. They could be the financer on a project. They could be an executive who works at the partner company. It could be the creator. It could be the showrunner. It could be the celebrity attachment. It could be a number of things. So when you see the EP credit, you can't always assume that, they had a heavy hand in the production, but they were a very important part of the process.
It's almost like a very important person. It's almost like VIP for whatever that means, actually, because executive producer is that. It's just a title in a sense. Like, it could mean so many different things based on the project. And most times you don't always really know.
Yeah. And I will say each executive producer does have an integral role in the project. They're just different from each other. Mm-hmm. So not every executive producer will be on set. Some will be remote. Some will, have key creative decision-making power. Others would maybe want to be more passive. Either way, I think it was just a very interesting process that I learned about through creating my first TV show. And what I realized was I might look different than a typical executive producer or director on set in the entertainment industry. I sold this show before I was 30 years old. I am a young woman of color surfer who was mistaken for cast on the set of Surf Girls.
Pretty much every time, I bet.
Every time, hey, are you ready to get mic'd? I was like, no, actually, I created the show, but I really appreciate that. So it feels good to defy expectations in that way and look at it as something that's positive versus, before I almost saw it as, I'm lacking so much prominence and power, and I'm new, and maybe I don't deserve this, maybe I don't belong here. Mm. But I quieted those voices and that negativity and turned it into my superpower, which is, I'm here and I earned it. And I feel like I can inspire younger women to pursue their dreams and go for it and be brave. So that's what I feel like I represent as a new executive producer. You can see it in the final product of Surf Girls Hawaii, how much heart went into this. And it's because of the team that was behind the camera and the trust that I built with the cast. They wouldn't have opened up had we not had years and years of friendship before. And being on set was very important to me because when cameras are on, it's super nerve-wracking. These are real women. These aren't actors or actresses. These are people, and we're following them through their real lives. And having someone like me on set help them open up emotionally.
Like calm down a little bit.
Yeah, and when you look behind the camera, I'm sitting right there rooting for them. There were a lot of parallels as they are entering the next level of their careers and deciding whether they want to be professional surfers or not miss out on all that life has to offer. I'm at a similar crossroads in my life. I'm trying to break into an industry that doesn't have much representation like me in it. So we definitely had a lot of moments where we realized that we are all going through very similar things, even though we are completely different people with completely different lives. So that was really special on the show and something that I felt was unique that I could offer as an EP on the show.
And so the team is super different though, right? So when you made the docu-series for YouTube, that was how big was your team on set, for example?
So for the YouTube series we created for Together, my team was under 10 people.
Okay. And then fast forward to when you made Surf Girls Hawaii, how many people were on set, would you say?
We were still a pretty skeleton set for industry standard, but probably around 30 people, so triple.
Wow, that's a lot.
Triple was a shock to me.
Yeah. What was the first day like for you? Like being like, whoa, 30 people. Like,
it felt really validating. This many people believe in an idea that I created around women that are incredible and that haven't had the light shown upon them. Wow. I can't believe that people are getting paid to work on this. It was just this out-of-body experience. So that was really special. And the first day was actually interviews, which is my specialty and my absolute favorite part of the process. So it was really fun to be in a more enclosed, environment and getting to know each other intimately and introducing them to the crew and starting to help build those relationships with the people that were going to be on set with us for the next 5 months. So that was a really amazing experience to see a project scale from a run and gun set that barely had an AC on certain days because we couldn't afford it, to, a multiple camera setup with multiple ACs and PAs.
What's the biggest learning curve like for that?
Realizing that you're not in charge of everything. Everyone has a role and it's going to help move the project forward. I feel like in these run and gun sets, especially as a director or producer, a lot of weight is on your shoulders for the success of the shoot. And you have to wear many, many hats. I was running for coffee while also directing, while also getting talent releases signed, while, prepping talent and miking them. So I think as a documentary filmmaker, these are very common scenarios. Whereas in the TV world, there are designated roles for designated jobs. And you don't cross over unless you get permission or have previously spoken about it. So I felt like, even operating a camera was something that I could do. I could shoot on the cameras that we were on, but that wasn't my role. So you had to learn how to put trust into new crew and really enjoy the process because it was nice to not have to do everything. Yeah. If I'm being honest.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's the feeling of letting go. It's like a little scary at first, but then once you actually trust someone, then it's like, oh, wow, yeah, I don't have to do this by myself, or I don't have to just do it with 3 people and we're doing like 7 different things.
Yeah. And I was able to bring on crew from my original series to the TV show.
Yeah.
So I had my underwater director of photography. We worked with, the local production company that sourced all of our camera operators. So there were a lot of familiar faces on set, as well as new faces. But it was a really great experience to work with new people, because I feel like when I work with someone that I love, I want to keep working with them over and over again. But I love learning by working with new people too. So I think that was something in the TV world that holds true for me. It was just a new experience, and I really had to trust the process.
What are some favorite, like, either books, podcasts, articles, like things, like where are you drawing some inspiration from in general? Not necessarily like to this project, but when you're getting ready for a new project, where do you draw inspiration from?
I mean, I look at what is in the market now. I always love a sports doc. So I've actually been binging all of the Untold series on Netflix. And at the same time, I've been trying to verse myself in the politics of the industry and see, you know, the direction that things are going in amid the writer strikes, the director strike, the actor strike. It's just like, this was all so new for me, and it happened right at the drop of my first TV show. I felt like I needed to educate myself on what's going on in the industry. So I started listening to The Town, and it is really interesting because it paints a full picture of the landscape and, you know, what streamers doing what, who's selling to who, you know, what shows flopped, what movies broke the box office. So I think it was just that education that has really helped me navigate this industry that's still super new to me.
Any key takeaways from your journey for Surf Girls Hawaii? How have you changed as a person?
I learned to trust my gut, validate my own experiences, stay flexible on your creative vision, and celebrate your accomplishments. Make sure that you're taking time for yourself, because it's very draining to create television, and it's very draining to pour your heart into your creative endeavors. So take a little break.
Take a break.
Yeah, take a break.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. I hope you found this useful. If you did, give us a rating. This will really help us grow our audience and better serve you. Also, if you love talking docs, join our weekly Discord Wednesdays at 5 p.m. PST, where we discuss a doc of the week and check in with each other. Talk soon.